I'm going to tell you about the time Spetsnaz tried to hunt me down for 9 days and came up empty. You want to know how to stay alive when professional killers want you dead? You don't hide. You disappear. Not movie disappear, not ninja vanish. I'm talking about the slow, painful, boring, disciplined kind of disappearing that keeps you breathing while better equipped, younger, well trained men grid the map looking for you. Name's Billy Waugh. SF, SOG, CIA, Korea, Vietnam, Africa, Afghanistan. I spent more than 50 years moving through other people's wars, hunting their hard men and being hunted back from North Vietnamese trackers to Soviet-trained security outfits to Islamist fighters in the mountains. I've watched Soviet advisors train goons. I've watched Russian doctrine get copied and bastardized all over the world. I've seen Spetsnaz-style hunters, and I've watched their pattern up close. I know how they think. I know how they move. So here's the story. 9 days. Hunted by Spetsnaz. No exfil bird on call. No QRF ready to swoop in and save me. No satellite phone to call mommy. Just me. My ruck, my rifle, a radio I didn't dare light up, and a valley full of men who'd built their careers on finding people like me in places like that. You think you want this life? We'll see by the end. I'll start with the ground. We were in one of those post-Soviet trouble spots in the early 90s. Not Russia, not officially. One of those little republics near the mountains where the Russians had trained a generation of hard men and then walked away, leaving them half-paid, angry, and more than happy to rent out their skills to whoever had cash and enemies. Officially, I wasn't there. Unofficially, I was working the fence. Working the fence means you're between sides. You're not really with this regime or that opposition. You're weaving between them, gathering information, helping shape things so they break the right way later. That's unconventional warfare. That's the SF business. You train guerrillas, you watch, you listen, you move. The brief going in was simple. Some ex-Spetsnaz boys were running a camp in a valley that wasn't on any tourist map. They were training the local security forces, plus some irregulars who didn't officially exist. New uniforms, old doctrine. They were teaching those kids the same tricks Moscow had used for decades. Infiltration, sabotage, kidnap, hard recon behind enemy lines. My job was even simpler. Take a walk. Watch them work. Photograph faces. Map routines. Count trucks and guns. Listen at night. Build a picture of how they'd fight if they ever turned that machine toward our people. 3 days observing. Slip out on foot along the backside of the valley. Meet a truck at a dry border. Nobody gets shot. Nobody gets famous. Nobody ever admits I was there. That was the plan. I volunteered immediately. Volunteer for everything. That's not just career advice. That's how you end up where history happens instead of reading about it in the Stars and Stripes. They say, we've got a little recon job. You don't start asking about per diem. You raise your hand, you move, because what you may turn down as insignificant may turn out to be the best thing going, or the piece that prevents a war from going sideways. Volunteer for everything, every time. So we slip in across the border. No halo, no fancy halo insert, no cinematic LZ. Just 2 beat-up trucks, 3 local guerrillas who knew every goat trail for 20 miles, and a cover story about cigarettes and spare parts. You don't roll into a valley like that with an American signature. You seep in. You ooze. We staged in a safe house outside a little town that smelled like diesel, stale bread, and cheap tobacco. I stripped my kit down right away. You don't go on a denied ground stroll with everything you think you might want. You go with what you can't live without. Water, ammo, camera, minimal medical, a radio with strict rules. Last resort only. Once that thing crackles, you're telling the whole valley exactly where you are. I also carried what matters most on these little errands. Paper, pencils, Film. Write, record, listen, take photographs. The four mandates. I've lived my whole life by that. Everybody talks a good game, but at the end of the day, if you don't document it, you never did it. Agencies can lose paperwork. Bosses can forget. But a photograph of a face at a camp that wasn't supposed to be there, that's truth. Don't show me a goddamn bunch of writing. Show me photos. Day -1, we do a rehearsal walk at dusk. I have the locals take me down to a ridge on the south side of the valley where we can see a string of lights that don't belong. Military lights are different. Spacing, pattern, discipline. You see it once, you never forget it. We watch a truck convoy roll in 3 gas-type trucks, a couple of lighter vehicles, shapes moving, voices carrying the cold air. I count heads. I listen to the cadence of the commands. Russian. Not just language, but attitude. You can pick it out across a field. I go to sleep that night on a thin mattress with my boots on and my kit packed. You don't unpack on a short job. You don't get comfortable. We move before dawn. No drama, just work. I use that tourist trick I've used on 3 continents. I jog. Americans do stupid things for no good reason. At least that's how they see us. Jogging in a country where the only people who run are thieves and kids is stupid, which makes it perfect. If they see me circling the town, sweating, stretching, looking like some old idiot who read in a magazine that running will give him 10 more years, they put me in a little box in their heads, labeled harmless. That box will save your life. So I jog the outer street. I make big circles. I let them see me in daylight, at distance, let them laugh, crazy foreigner. I want them to expect me there so that when I'm gone, they don't think recon. They think old guy got bored and left. Once I've built that pattern, I slip away along a field path like I'm just adding miles to my run. Then I vanish into the tree line. We move slow, hugging dead ground, staying off the ridgeline skyline like it's hot. I've spent my life slipping behind people's shoulders. You learn early. If they can silhouette you against the sky, they can hit you. Doesn't matter if they're Viet Cong with iron sights or Russian with optics. A body on a skyline is an invitation. By mid-morning, I'm on that south ridge with my little Nikon, glassing their camp through scrub. I start doing what I do best. I document. I'm not there to be a hero. I'm there to be a camera with legs and experience. I log what time they form up, which side the trucks peel off on. That one guy with the different rig, maybe a signals man, maybe a political officer, which corners of the perimeter are lazy, where the dogs are, where the water comes in. I work until my eyes burn. I'm alone on that slope when I hear the bell. Soft little tink, tink. Goat? Then the boy. He's younger than I like to see out in the hills alone, maybe 16, 17, skinny, clothes that say poor but not starving. He tops the little rise with his goat and almost walks right over me. For half a second, we just stare at each other. Now, this is where your average internet tough guy starts thinking about killing witnesses. All that chest thumping about no loose ends. Killing is easy. You put a round through his chest or you slide a knife in behind the collarbone and you've got a problem solved for about 8 hours until his family comes looking. Then you've got a timing problem, a missing person rumor problem, a body disposal problem. What do you have once you kill somebody? You've got a dead body to get out too, or a ghost that people start talking about. A dead boy in a valley draws more attention than an old fool with a camera. Capture beats kill when you can manage it, because capture buys you intelligence, information, options. Killing just buys you silence and a logistical mess. That was true with terrorists, with warlords, with Carlos the Jackal in Sudan, and it's true here on a hillside with a kid and a goat. So I don't even touch the rifle. I open my hands, slow, palms out. I smile. Salam, I say, in his dialect. Peace. Then I roll into a stream of local slang. Stupid traveler talk. Lost. Thirsty. Wrong trail. Looking for a cousin. You pick up that dialect on tea benches and in markets if you keep your ears open. You go to a country you're going to work in and you need the language to stay alive, you're going to learn the language enough to get by, I promise you. His eyes flicked to the camera. He's not a fool. He's seen bootleg tapes of Western journalists. He's seen smugglers. He knows what a lens is. I tap the camera. I shrug, like it's a toy. He bolts, just turns and runs, hauling that goat along like a rag doll. Down the trail, back toward the town, toward the roadblocks, and the bored policemen who now suddenly have a story to tell their officer. I let him go. Once he's moving like that, you're not going to calmly talk him down. If you chase him, you confirm his worst fear: predator, enemy. If you drop him, you've turned a recon job into a murder investigation. So you accept the mess you've got. You don't panic. You move. That's rule one in an evasion. Think in movement. I grab what matters: camera, notes, water, the radio, and I start sliding off the backside of that ridge before his goat bell is even faded. You move before the story can catch up to you. Because here's how this works from their side. Boy runs into a checkpoint babbling about a foreigner in the hills with a camera. Maybe he dramatizes it, maybe he doesn't matter. That word goes up the little food chain to some mid-level officer who remembers the briefing about possible foreign agents. That officer makes a call. Either he shrugs it off, or if I'm having a bad day, he knows there are Russian trainers nearby and he wants to impress them. He calls the Russians. Russian Spetsnaz doctrine is built around using small recon and hunter-killer groups. They like to put feelers out. They don't sit on their hands when there's scent of an enemy in their rear area. So if a kid says foreigner with camera, the right kind of officer hears priority target. That buys me maybe 6 hours. 6 hours before a group of men who do this for a living start climbing that ridge looking for sign. So I don't stay on the ridge. I don't even stay near it. I drop 2 contour lines down on the far side, moving fast but controlled, staying in the brush, using rocks, avoiding the easy game trails. You never run a ridge like a tourist when you're being hunted. You work the ugly path. You go where your knees complain. I trade altitude for time. By early afternoon, I'm in a narrow crease on the north side of the valley, tucked under pines, listening. Evasion isn't hiding. Evasion is in and out movement, timed with your opponent's laziness. I don't care if it's North Vietnamese trackers in the jungle or Spetsnaz in the mountains. Nobody is sharp 24 hours a day. There is always a window. The trick is living long enough to use it. I know from long habit that after 2100, most soldiers everywhere get stupid. They want warmth, smoke, gossip, sleep. That's your 5-hour block. From about 2200 to 0300, if you're quiet and smart, you can move through another man's backyard like a ghost. They don't like to work at night. You love it. So I go still for the afternoon and early evening. I eat a little hard biscuit. I drink measured sips. I check my feet. You don't let blisters surprise you on day 4. A blister you ignore is an infection on day 6, and an infection means you walk slower. Slow, get you caught. The sun dips behind the ridge. The valley changes. You hear engines. Trucks up on that old road where there weren't trucks before. The sound comes thin and echoing. I can't see them from my crease, but I don't need to. You spend enough time in the field and you can tell the difference between a local farmer's ancient box with a hole in the muffler and a military truck in second gear with a load of angry men in the back. Doors slam. Voices. Russian. Carrying on the cold air. Amerikansky. There it is. They know what they're hunting. That's the start of day 1. Night folds in around me like a blanket that's never really warm. I wait. You don't jump the gun on movement. Night is your ally, but the first hour or 2 after dark, everybody's still keyed up. Patrol briefings. Last radio checks. Young guys eager to prove they're not scared of the dark. You let that burn off. Around 2,200, the valley gets that particular quiet I like. It's not silence, it's a different pattern. Fewer shouts, more murmurs. An engine that starts and then stops and doesn't come back. Dogs move into the warm spots. That's your window. I start my first proper move as a hunted man. No flashlight, no smoking, no silhouette. I stay below any line that might look like a skyline. I use every depression. I stay off the obvious drainage because that's where the trackers go first. People love easy ground. You go where it's hard. Constant movement is survival now, but not big bold movement. Micro moves, short legs, one ridge line over, one fold deeper. You don't put 10 kilometers between you and the hunters. If that 10 kilometers is on an easy path, they can follow at a jog. Better to put 2 kilometers on terrain that makes grown men cuss. I angle north-northwest toward rougher hills and fewer villages. I plan like this. Every night, I want to break whatever grid they've drawn. Spetsnaz units will take a map and start slicing it into search sectors, assigning groups to each slice. They'll clear ridge by ridge, drainage by drainage, using patrols and sometimes dogs. If I can move diagonally across their grid, shift altitude bands, and never bed down in the kind of place they've just cleared, I make their job hell. By dawn, my legs are rubber. I've put maybe 8, 9 hard kilometers behind me, most of it side hilling, which your knees will hate you for. I find a spot that looks like nothing, broken rocks, thorny brush, a little overhang where the frost doesn't quite reach. I crawl in, I become a piece of trash. That's it. That's day 1. Day 2, I'm in full evasion mode. And the hunt is just getting started. Day 2 starts with pain. Not dramatic pain, just that dull, deep ache in your legs and lower back that says, "Oh man, you did more last night than you had any business doing." I've felt that in rice paddies in the 60s, in African cities in the 90s, and in the Afghan mountains in my 70s, still humping a ruck and a rifle with kids young enough to be my grandsons. That's the price of being a warrior who insists on staying involved. You accept it. You move anyway. I wake in my little rock crack with my hands already on my gear. That's habit. You go to sleep in a place like this. You don't roll up like you're in a motel. You curl around your tools, gun under your hand, water where you can reach it without making a silhouette. If something wakes you, you want to be dangerous in 1 second, not 10. The valley is gray and cold. I listen before I move. Listening is survival. Everybody wants to talk about shooting, fighting, running. The operator who lives is the one who shuts his mouth and opens his ears. Trucks, dogs, voices on the wind. A single burst of automatic fire a long way off might mean somebody else tripped over my problem, or it might mean nothing. You don't guess. You log. You compare. I hear nothing close. Good. The Spetsnaz boys will have spent last night locking down the obvious, the ridge where the boy saw me, the trails leading out of the valley, the first ring of villages. That's what I'd do. Secure the perimeter, then start pushing in. They'll have squads combing that south slope right now, cutting sign, looking for where I went. That's why I'm not there. You stay invisible by refusing to be where they expect you to be. I eat a tiny breakfast, more of a gesture than a meal. A few bites of biscuit. I ration my water. I clean my feet again. That's boring. That's the point. Evasion is boring until the second it isn't. You win in the boring parts. Then I move. Day movement is different from night movement. At night, the world is a black sheet you poke holes in. You can choose those holes. At day, you're on their terms. Eyes are out, glasses up, drones in today's world. But even before that, every high spot gets watched sooner or later. So in daylight, I think like a stain. I don't cross open ground unless I absolutely have to. I don't give them a clean body shape to see. I move short, broken legs, 5 minutes of careful motion, 5 minutes still, always listening, always tasting the air. And I start moving in a direction they're not going to like, into the mountains. Most armies hate mountains. The Russians learned that the hard way in more than one war. They've built specialized units for mountain work, and their Spetsnaz train hard for it. Climbing, skiing, long movements with heavy loads on bad terrain. But nobody, and I mean nobody, likes chasing a motivated man deeper into steep, broken ground for days. It eats manpower and time. It narrows the margin of error. It punishes sloppy planning. I know that, so I make a choice on day 2. I'm not going to try to circle back to my original pickup right away. That route is compromised. You don't keep hugging the plan once the plan is dead. The exfil point is in their mental map now, whether they know it or not. Instead, I'll drag them where they don't want to go and where I can survive on what the land gives me. The first half of that day is just work. I side hill along the northern wall of the valley, staying 2 contour lines above the farm tracks, 2 below the skyline, dead ground. I like to imagine I'm just a piece of the hillside that occasionally decides to roll along. I stop and glass behind me, using the smallest sliver of scope I can. No big shiny lens flashing like a signal mirror, just quick snapshots. Around midday, I see the first sign of the hunt. Down below, on one of the wider tracks, a small convoy moves slow. 2 trucks, 1 lighter vehicle, maybe a UAZ type. They're not in a hurry. That's dangerous. Men who are running are easy to read. Men who are methodical are trouble. These guys hop out at intersections, walk a little, check culverts, talk to locals. That's how a disciplined force tightens a net politely at first. I freeze. I let them finish their business and move on. I'm too far away to pick out details, but the posture, the way they carry their weapons, the way they leave one man watching while 2 talk, that's all Spetsnaz style, or at least men trained by that doctrine. They're not village goons. You don't let that scare you. You respect it. Respect is different from fear. Fear gets you shaking, gets you making big stupid moves to feel safe. Respect makes you precise. A warrior respects his enemy because a lazy enemy doesn't teach you anything. A sharp enemy makes you better. Day 2, late afternoon, I hit my first water problem. Up high, the streams break into little seep lines. Enough to drink if you're patient, but not enough to make a village. That's good. Fewer people, but you have to risk moving a little extra to find those seeps. I track along a line of green growth until I hear the trickle. I belly in, staying under the roots of a fallen tree, and use a cut-down bottle to scoop slow. Take your time. Don't slurp like a dog. You may have to leave in a hurry. Leave the water as undisturbed as possible, so from 10 meters away it still looks like it's been doing what it's done for 1,000 years, nothing. As the sun tilts down, I start thinking about night 2. I want to be 1 valley over by morning. That's the mission for tonight. I let the last light fade, wrapped in a little depression with a view down slope. I see headlights in the distance, little moving fireflies tracing the road network. I pick out 1 cluster where they've stopped and set up. That's probably a local command post company level, maybe. They'll push patrols out from there in wedges. Fine. I won't be in their wedges. When the night pattern shifts again, bustle to murmur, engines to quiet, I move. Same rules. No silhouette, no white light, no open ground, unless the alternative is worse. I stay in the trees where I can, using trunks as visual breaks. I cross 1 small logging road low, in a shallow bend, so if they're glassing it with NV, my heat signature is short and buried in background. Twice that night, I hear voices closer than I like. Once above me, guys on the ridge, probably checking a line of old bunkers. Once below, where a group is walking a path with a dog. The dog stops, sniffs, whines once. That's a bad sound. My whole body goes still down to my heartbeat. The handler says something rough in Russian, jerks the leash. The dog whines again, then moves. I don't exhale until they're gone. This is the part nobody sees on a highlight reel. Just you, your heartbeat, and a dog's nose 3 trees away from the end of your story. That's day 2 into night 2. By dawn of day 3, I'm in a new valley. It's narrower, steeper, less friendly. Good. The villages are farther apart. The terrace is rougher. Goats instead of cattle. Less traffic. I find a tucked away spot on a north-facing slope under big rocks where moss grows thick. From 30 meters, it's a dark blotch. From 3 meters, it's my world. Day 3 is where hunger starts to talk to you. Water I can find. Food becomes a negotiation. You can go 9 days without a proper meal. I've done worse. But your mood, your thinking, your willpower, all of that is tied to fuel. The brain that makes good decisions needs calories. That's where all those volunteer for everything years pay off again. People think volunteering is just saying yes to missions. It's more than that. It's saying yes to learning how peasants hide grain. Yes to helping a family slaughter a goat so you know where the good cuts hide. Yes to sitting on an oil drum and watching how smugglers pack a truck. Yes to volunteering for language class when everybody else wants beer. You build a library in your head. You have no idea when you'll need the knowledge. You just know you will. Today, I need to know where food might be cached in a village that doesn't want to see strangers. I watch a small cluster of houses through my glass as the day warms. Women move between doorways. Kids chase a half-deflated ball. A man leads a donkey up the path, sack slung over its back. I watch where he goes, what door he uses, where the sacks go. Not the sack going into the front room, that's for show. The sack disappearing around the back into a little lean-to, that's grain. I wait until afternoon again. It's habit now. Men are either in the fields or sleeping in the shade. Kids are bored, women are annoyed, people let more slip when they're tired of the day. You want to be part of that background noise, not the main story. I come in low. I dirty myself up a little first, rub dust in my hair, in my beard, smudge my face. I carry my jacket over one shoulder like a man who's been walking too long in the sun. And I keep the rifle hidden under that jacket, muzzle down, nothing to silhouette. I pick a house on the edge, always the edge house. People in the middle are wired into the gossip circuit. Edge families see more travelers and keep their mouths shut more often. I step into the courtyard and stop where they can see me. The woman in the doorway freezes. 2 kids peek around her skirt. I give them the same routine, but this time I'm better. I use the valley slang I picked up on day 1 from that other village. I make my accent a little heavier, like I'm from 2 valleys over, close enough to belong, far enough that if they ask about relatives, I've got room to lie. I complain about my feet, about the road, about the price of bread, universal things. She stares for a long beat, then does what most humans do when confronted with a hungry, tired stranger who doesn't immediately scare them. She softens. "Sit," she says, finally. She brings me bread, olives, a dip that tastes like yogurt and herbs. I eat like a man, trying not to insult his hosts by acting starved. Small bites, chew slow, compliment the food, talk about nothing. Eventually she asks what everybody asks. "Where are you going?" "North," I say, "to my brother. He has work." I make it vague. I give a place name that's real but far enough that nobody wants details. Philosophical distance. She shakes her head and mentions soldiers on the other side of the ridge. "Always soldiers," I say, shrugging. I don't lean in. I don't ask for uniforms or patches or where they're from. I'm just a tired man who's already resigned to the fact that the world is full of men with guns. That keeps me invisible. Before I leave, I do something that looks stupid on paper. I take out a tiny instant camera and snap a photo of the kids. The picture spits out after a few seconds. The kids laugh. The woman smiles despite herself. I hand it to them. People remember kindness and novelty. If Spetsnaz come through and start asking about strangers, she's going to remember the odd pilgrim who took a picture of her children and gave it to her. It doesn't erase suspicion, but it blurs the edges. In her head, I'm that silly man instead of possible spy. That difference might buy me an hour, or a softer tone when she talks about me. I leave with a full stomach and a little bag of dried fruit she insists I take. That night, I move again. By now, the Spetsnaz net will have shifted. If they're competent, and they are, they'll have drawn likely paths on their maps towards the border, towards larger towns, towards known smuggler routes. They'll put blocking positions on those lines, put patrols in the gaps. They'll use their own mountain training, rappelling, high marches, winter gear if needed to get into spots they think I'll use. So I do the opposite. I head deeper, away from the easy exits. That feels wrong to your survival brain. Your survival brain wants to run for the border, the safe house, the exfil, but a warrior is not a slave to panic. A warrior is a guy that wishes to be involved, period. And that includes being involved in his own thinking. You reason it out. You trade short-term comfort for long-term survival. Night 3 is rough. The terrain gets cruel. Loose rock, sharp drops, weird echoing gullies where one cough can bounce around like a rifle shot. I go slower. I take longer to pick routes. Once I have to backtrack completely out of a slot I'd committed to because I realize halfway down that if they put a patrol at the bottom, I'd be stuck with no lateral exit. That's the thing about evasion. You can't just think about the next 20 meters. You have to constantly ask, if this goes bad right here, right now, where do I go? Every move needs a contingency. Around midnight, I stop under an overhang that feels like the inside of a tomb. I hear something then I don't like. Not voices, rotors, far off at first, then closer, fading again as they work a pattern. Helicopters changed the game. In my younger years with SOG, we were the ones coming out of the sky. In later years, hunting terrorists, I'd watched what happened when a man on foot thought he could beat air with just his legs. You can't, not directly. But aircraft are blind without information. They need someone to tell them where to look. So as long as I can keep the ground game confused, the birds are just doing circles. They're not going to waste flight hours flying random deep into these mountains. They'll fly where the map and the ground units tell them I'm likely to be. My job is to be where I'm not likely. I tuck myself all the way under that rock, pull my shape apart. Anything reflective gets buried. If they sweep this bit of hillside with a spotlight or a thermal, I want my signature to look like what it is most of the time. Stone, brush, nothing. I press myself into the earth and let my breathing slow. The helicopter moves on. They're working the lower valleys. Good. By dawn of day 4, I'm skinnier, dirtier, but alive. That's the truth of staying invisible. It's not one big trick. It's 1,000 small, disciplined decisions in a row when you're tired and sore and hungry and scared. Day 4, I start thinking about communication. Up to now, my radio has stayed cold. That's deliberate. Every time you key a radio, you light a little flare in the electromagnetic spectrum. Direction finding equipment, even basic stuff, can use that. Maybe not in a second, maybe not perfectly, but enough to narrow down sectors. You don't talk unless you have to. But 9 days is a long time. Intelligence you don't pass in time is just a story. I've got photographs, notes, patterns on those Spetsnaz trainers in their camp, faces of local officers cozying up to Russian advisors. That's why I came. If I die up here with that camera, doesn't matter how romantic the story is. The mission fails. So I start gaming out how to talk without talking. Primitive comms, old school tricks. I've used mirror flashes in deserts to talk to aircraft before. You take a little mirror with a double hole, line it up with the sun and the bird, and you can ping a high flyer at 15 miles. If he's in on the game, he revs his engines as acknowledgement. No radio needed. People forget that sort of thing now that they've got satellite everything. But physics doesn't forget. Problem is, I don't have a mirror. But I have reflective surfaces. I log that for later. What I decide for day 4 is this. I'll get high. I'll find a spot where I can see a fair chunk of sky and valleys. I'll watch for any sign that our side is flying anything in this sector. If I see a pattern, regular passes at altitude, I'll think about risking a signal on a later day. That gives me an objective beyond don't die. You need that. Just not dying is a bad mission in your head. Too vague. You start taking chances just to feel like you're doing something. Better to say, today, I'm going to move to this terrain feature and set conditions for exfil, even if the exfil is days away. So I climb. Day 4 is pure elevation. I work my way up toward a long ridge that runs east-west, a sort of backbone over the valleys. The ground turns mean, loose shale, patches of snow in the shade, wind that cuts right through your jacket. Every step up is a reminder that you're not 25 anymore. I talk to myself in my head. Keep moving, old man. You wanted to be involved. Here you are. Never quit, never quit. Little mantras, not motivational poster junk, just blunt reminders. You chose this. You stepped into this. Finish the job. Midday, I take a long halt behind a boulder field and glass back down into the valleys. I see what I expected. The hunt has spread. Roadblocks on the main tracks, little clusters of men in uniform at village edges, a patrol moving along a stream that I used yesterday, a good 8 hours after I left it. They're methodical. They're following doctrine, slicing the ground, checking likely routes, interviewing locals, adjusting. Up high, I hear a distant chopper again, but it never crosses my slice of sky. Good. I reach the ridgeline before dusk. The view is ugly and beautiful at the same time. To the north, more mountains folding away until they blur. To the south, the valleys I've been weaving through. Somewhere back there, a boy with a goat is still telling his story. Somewhere down there, a Russian-trained officer is cursing his trackers for not having my head on a table yet. I find a hollow just off the crest, on the leeward side, where wind isn't trying to peel my skin off. That's home for the day's last light and the night to come. Up here, it hits harder how alone you are. No traffic noises, no dogs, just wind and a few bird calls that don't care who owns the valley this decade. That's when the philosophical part creeps in. You start asking yourself the usual questions. Why am I still doing this at my age? Why do I keep putting my skin in front of other people's guns? A warrior is not a guy who loves killing. A warrior is a guy that wishes to be involved, period. Involved in the big things, involved where it matters. If you don't have that in you, this life will chew you up in year 1. If you do have it, you don't stop just because your knees hurt or the calendar flipped into a new decade. I lie there under my rock, listening to the wind, and I know one thing for sure. Tomorrow, day 5, the Spetsnaz boys will be tired of chasing a ghost. Tired men make mistakes. And that's when I start thinking not just about surviving them, but about using them. Because disappearing is good, but turning hunters into sources of information, into pawns, that's better. Killing is easy. Capture their minds, their patterns, their weaknesses, that's the art. So on day 5, the hunt shifts, and I shift with it. Day 5 starts with a decision. Up to now, I've been reacting. Move when they move, slide when they slide. Stay one ridgeline out of reach and hope nobody gets lucky with a dog or a random patrol. That keeps you alive. It doesn't win. You don't survive 9 days hunted by professionals just by running away. At some point, you have to start shaping the battlefield. Even if your battlefield is a stretch of rock and scrub, no one will ever put on a postcard. So I changed my mission. Day 5, I'm not just evading. I'm going to make them see things that aren't there. Russian doctrine, like most doctrine, likes predictability. Grids, sectors, patterns. They feed their officers these comfortable charts and arrows. Spetsnaz guys are trained to think more flexibly than regular troops, but they're still human. They still depend on some structure to focus their hunt. You break that structure, you get inside their heads. I start simple. I spend the morning watching. From my little hollow just off the ridge, I've got enough angle on 2 valleys to see movement. Patrol's still moving the lower routes. A couple of trucks at a crossroads that weren't there 2 days ago. A checkpoint flag I can just make out through the haze. More important, I see where they're not. Very little movement, high. They've committed to a theory that any sane man is going to head down toward roads and borders and towns, not up where the air is thin and the trails are bad. Sanity is overrated. I let the sun climb until the shadows get short. Then I move a little back along the ridge to a spot where the slope falls away in a steep scree face dotted with brush. Down at the bottom, several hundred meters below, there's a faint track used by goats and the occasional shepherd. I take a breath, then I do something that feels wrong after days of erasing my presence. I leave sign, deliberate sign, a heel print in a place where loose rock will hold it, a scuff where a careless man might have slipped, a broken twig bending in the wrong direction. Small things, but visible to a trained eye looking up from the bottom. Then I back out. I don't go down that slope. I don't even cross it. I carefully, painstakingly circle back to my original side of the ridge, using rocks and handholds that won't show much to anyone. My goal isn't to be invisible everywhere. It's to be very visible in one wrong place. You never give the enemy nothing. You give him something wrong. By midday, I'm dug in again, this time a little farther west on the ridge, watching that scree slope from a different angle. It takes hours. Patience is a weapon. Finally, in late afternoon, I see what I was waiting for. 2 figures appear on the track below. Then 2 more, 4-man element, classic. They move with purpose, not like farmers. Spacing is good. Weapons up, eyes working. The man in front is bent a little more than the rest, scanning the ground. Tracker. He picks up what I left for him inside of 2 minutes. I can tell when he stiffens. He says something to the man behind him, points up the slope. They hold a brief conversation, then one of them gets on a radio, low and quick. They don't start climbing yet. They wait for instructions. Perfect. If the officer on the other end has any imagination, he's going to see that heel print and think, finally, we've got him. He's trying to go high. He'll start shifting assets. Maybe he pulls a patrol from another valley. Maybe he tasks the helicopter to fly a route along this ridge tonight. That's good for me, because I'm not going to be here. Night 5, I'm going to move laterally off this ridge and drop into a different drainage entirely, one that doesn't show up on their new arrows. That's how you shape a hunt. Not big hero moves. Little lies. I let the 4-man team start working their way up the scree, slow and cautious. It's nasty ground. 1 bad step and half the slope will come down in a roar. They know that, so they inch. I don't watch them long. Never get fixated on one piece of the board. While you're admiring your handiwork here, somebody else can be flanking you over there. I pull back and slide to my westward hide as the light starts to go. Day 5 has a bite in the air. Wind up here has teeth. I can feel my body getting thinner, weaker. Hunger works on your brain in nasty ways. You start daydreaming about stupid things, cold soda, big plates of eggs, all the little luxuries of the zone of interior. I shut that down. Fantasies don't help you move. Instead, I give myself a task. Inventory. I pull everything out of my pack in the fading light, one item at a time, and put my hands and eyes on it. Ammunition. Still loaded properly. No mud in the mags. I haven't fired a round yet, and if this goes the way it should, I never will. The day you have to start trading bullets with Spetsnaz in their own hunting ground is the day your evasion plan failed. Medical kit. Still sealed. I check my feet again. Hot spots, cracked skin, but no open wounds. I massage them for a few minutes. That sounds soft until you remember that a man with ruined feet is a man who can't shape anything. He just waits and hopes. I don't do hope. Camera, film, notes, those are my real weapons. I scan the notes by touch more than sight. I know what I've seen in that valley. Faces, vehicles, the way the Russians interacted with their local partners, who deferred, who commanded. That intel will matter later to people who will never know how hungry I was writing it. I pack everything away again in the same order. You keep order in your gear when you can't keep order in the world. As night falls, I feel the hunt change tone, even up here. You can't hear frustration, not directly, but you can hear its symptoms. Engines rev longer than necessary. Voices sharper. Longer radio bursts. Checkpoints that used to look relaxed, now more rigid. These men are under pressure. Somebody up the chain wants results. Good. Pressured men take shortcuts. Shortcuts I can use. The helicopter comes back that night. Different pattern. Lower, slower, working one side of the ridge and then the other. They've been told someone saw a sign up here. They're trying to confirm. I flatten under my rock, every bit of me trying to be stone. Its spotlight rakes along the slope once, twice. My little scree slope with the heel print gets a long, loving look. They'll put a patrol up there at first light, maybe more than one. They'll burn energy and time on a ghost path. Meanwhile, when that bird moves off, I'm already sliding down into shadow on the far side. Night 5's movement is miserable. The north flank of the ridge is steeper, colder. There's old snow in patches. I slip more than I like. Once my foot goes out from under me and I slide 5, 6 meters before I can stop myself on a tree root, rock tears skin from my palm. It stings. I bite that down. Pain is information. Bleeding isn't just a wound. It's DNA on rocks. It's scent. The smart thing is to bandage it in place. Make sure I'm not leaving droplets. I tuck my hand into my armpit for a minute to slow the flow, then wrap it with a bit of clean cloth and tape. I'll clean it properly when I hole up. Not now. Now is for moving. By the time false dawn starts to gray the sky, I'm a good 2 kilometers laterally from that planted sign, down in the head of a narrow ravine that points away from the main valleys. It's a miserable little cut, steep, choked with brush, no good paths. Perfect. I wedge myself under an overhang where the ravine bends, out of sight from above and below. Day 6 is about letting them beat their heads against my lie. I sleep in snatches. You don't get a full 8 hours on the run. You take what the world gives you, 10 minutes, 20, an hour if you're lucky, always followed by a wake-up where you don't move at first, you listen, you sniff, you let your body tell you if something is wrong. Around mid-morning, I hear them, not close, above, boots grinding on rock, voices faint. I inch forward enough to peer through a tangle of roots at the sky strip. I can't see the men, just a hint of shapes on the crest and the occasional clatter of loose stone. They're on the ridge. Good. The helicopter swings by again later, but farther away. They're working up there. I stay here. Day 6 is also when my thinking gets more focused on exfil. Up until now, every choice has been about survival and confusion. Live. Make 'em work. Don't get caught. But 9 days is the window I was given in my head. Around that, the local picture will change. Units will rotate. The Russians might get pulled for another job or new ones flown in, and that resets the board. I want to be off this board before that happens, with my information delivered. So I do something uncomfortable. I start thinking about going back toward people I trust. That means at some point I have to cross ground they're watching. You can't just live up here indefinitely. You're not a cave hermit. You're on a clock. Food, weather, age, all of it. The romantic fantasy of the lone man outsmarting an army forever is just that, a fantasy. At some point, the numbers close in. Exfil is a risk, but a necessary one. I pull out the mental map I've been updating every day. Original border, south-southeast, now sewn up with checkpoints and probably face sheets being passed around. They'll have my description from that boy by now, plus whatever else the locals have offered. Older foreigner, fit beard, strange accent, maybe carries like a soldier. The logical move is to swing wide, then drop out in a place they're not expecting. West, there's heavier mountains, more wild ground, but also a different border, one I know less about. Unknown unknowns, dangerous. East, closer to their original base of operations. South, toward my own entry point. I choose something between south and west. A diagonal. There's a little smuggler run that way, a set of passes and cuts used for moving cigarettes, fuel, whatever's profitable this decade. I know about it because I volunteered years back to sit with smugglers in another country and just listen to their stories. Men love to brag about hard routes they've run, especially to an old foreigner who seems entertained. Those stories live in my head now. One of those runs lines up with the terrain I'm looking at. That will be my path. Not tonight, tomorrow. Day 6 and its night are about setting the stage. As evening falls, I climb carefully out of the ravine, staying to the side that gives me cover from the ridge. The last thing I want is to poke my head up right under some frustrated Russian peering down with binoculars. I gain elevation until I can see a different valley, narrower, with fewer villages. The air smells different here, less smoke, more resin from pine. I pick a high shelf where I can watch both the old ridge and the new direction. It's like sitting between two worlds. Behind me, the world where they think I am. Ahead of me, the world where I'm going to go. Night 6, I allow myself a tiny indulgence. I talk, not to anyone, just out loud, quietly, under my breath. I run through the principles. Killing is easy, Billy. I tell myself, what do you have once you kill somebody? Dead weight, problems. Capture is harder. Confusion is harder. Make them chase ghosts. Make them doubt their own maps. I remind myself of why documentation matters, too. You didn't come here to play hide and seek. You came here to watch them. You came here to write it down, record it, photograph it. Don't just survive. Complete the mission. That's a key distinction. Men who only want to live will give up a mission the second it feels hard. Warriors understand that survival and mission success are tied. Sometimes that means you take more risk to finish the job. On day 7, I finally see what I've been waiting for in the sky. Not Russian birds. Different pattern. High, fast, too thin to be a local cargo run. A small speck cutting a clean line against the blue. Could be anything, sure. But pattern recognition is life. If that's one of ours, just on a broad route, it means there's at least a chance someone on my side is looking into this slice of airspace. I don't act on it yet. Too far, too vague. But I log it. Day 7 is the pivot day. My body's not happy. I'm lightheaded. My hands shake a little when I first wake. When I stand up too fast, the world tilts. That's dehydration, nibbling at the edges and low blood sugar doing its little dance. I force myself to eat what I have left. You don't hoard to the point of stupidity. Rationing is good. Starving while you still have food is goofy. You need your brain. I start my diagonal move. Southwest, hugging terrain, always one step removed from anything that looks like a path. Twice that day, I cross sign of other humans. A boot print near a dried spring, a cigarette butt under a rock. Both old, maybe days, maybe weeks. It tells me someone else uses these cuts. Good. That means routes. Around midday, I see the first real sign that the Russians are thinning their operation. Down below, on the main valley floor far off to my right, a convoy is moving out. More trucks than before. Dust plume. They're leaving some elements in place? Sure. But the heavy emphasis has shifted. Maybe their officers have told them the foreigner is either gone or dead. Maybe they've got new orders. That's my window. You don't get sentimental about beating them. You don't assume they're gone. You just recognize that the net is looser today than it was yesterday. I push harder. Day 7 into night 7, I walk myself right to the edge of stupid, long legs, minimal rest, risky crossings of a couple of narrow saddles where if anybody happened to be glassing, they'd see a man-shaped dot. I time those sprints to coincide with cloud cover and wind. Bad conditions for them are good for me. Eventually, sometime long after midnight, I hit the first landmark I've been aiming for. A twisted old pine by a rock shaped like a broken tooth, just like it was described to me years before. From here, if you drop straight down the slope and keep the tooth to your right shoulder, you'll hit a hidden path used by men who don't want to show up at checkpoints. Smuggler's wisdom. I thank those ghosts silently. I drop. The path, when I find it, is nothing much, just a slightly clearer line among rocks and brush, worn by years of illegal commerce. It wraps and bends in ways that only make sense if you know where the patrols usually are. It doesn't take the shortest route. It takes the least seen. I follow it. As dawn of day 8 starts to wash the sky in pale color, I hear something I half hoped for and half dreaded. Voices. Ahead, I freeze, drop, listen. 2 men, local language. They're talking about loads, about timing, about prices, smugglers. I could avoid them. Slip off, circle around, give them space, but sometimes to stay invisible, you have to be seen by the right people. I make a choice. I step out onto the path in front of them, hands visible, posture relaxed, like I belong there as much as they do. They halt, eyes wide. Old foreigner, right in their pipeline. We stand there for a long beat. Then I do the most disarming thing I can. I grin. Late night for business, brothers, I say in their tongue. One of them snorts despite himself. The air changes. Smugglers are nervous people by profession, but they're also practical. They understand men on the run. They understand that sometimes helping a stranger is a better option than making an enemy out of one. Where from, one asks. I give him a place name 2 valleys over. Where to? I give him another. He looks me up and down, taking in the state of me. The pack, the beard, the way I stand. He's seen my type before, in other guises. Fighters, couriers, ghosts. Army? He says. Once, I answer. Now just old and stubborn. He laughs at that. That laugh is my opening. Smugglers don't like armies, especially foreign ones, but they respect stubborn. Trouble behind, he asks, jerking his chin back the way I came. I shrug. Always trouble behind. He glances at his partner. They have a quiet exchange I pretend not to follow, but I catch enough words to know they're weighing risk versus reward. If they say no and I cause them trouble later, that's bad. If they say yes and someone searches them, also bad. But if they can make a little money and a friend, maybe that's good. Walk with us, he says finally. We know the rocks. You look like you will fall on your face. Fair enough. I'm not too proud to accept help. A warrior doesn't confuse ego with strength. You use every asset. That includes two men who know this mountain path like their own hands. We move. They set a brutal pace, but purposeful. They know where to place their feet, where the loose stone gives way to solid, where a faint line between boulders marks a side cut that avoids an exposed bend. They don't talk much now. Business mode. By midday of day 8, we're deep in their world. I catch glimpses of their little infrastructure, a cache hidden under an overhang, a water point disguised with brush, a crude marker rock where one route forks away toward another border entirely. These are the shadow highways that don't show on any map. I pay for their guidance the only way I can. Information. Not about my mission. Never that. But about other places. About how certain units operate. About what I've seen corrupt cops do in cities far from here. Stories that have value in their world. Knowledge is currency. I feed them enough to keep them interested, never enough to arm them against me or mine later. In return, I get something better than a path. I get camouflage. We reach a small, hidden camp near dusk, just a rock shelter with a tarp, some supplies, a fire, scar carefully cleaned. One of the smugglers digs in his pack and throws me a wrapped bit of food. Eat, he says. You are making me tired looking at you. I eat. Bread, cheese, a strip of dried meat. It hits my stomach like a small bomb, but in a good way. My hands stop shaking as badly. Night 8, I make another decision. I tell them I need to signal my own people without saying exactly who those people are. They nod slowly. Smugglers understand signaling. They use mirrors, fires, horn patterns. They understand the risk and the necessity. You have mirror? Horn asks. I shake my head. He grunts, fishes around in his gear, and comes up with a small, scratched metal compact, probably taken from some traveler years ago. This shines, he says. We use for trucks sometimes. You use now. If soldiers come from sky and ask, we say old fool stole it. Fair trade. Day 9 dawns with clear sky. Blue, thin, merciless. My legs feel like they belong to someone else. My feet are a mess under the bandages. My back is one long complaint, but my mind is sharp again from the food and the sense that an end is possible. We climb to a particular shoulder of the mountain where the smugglers say you can see 3 valleys and a slice of distant road. It's a known lookout point in their world, but not an obvious one from below. We wait. Mid-morning, I see what I've been hoping to see. High up, a small aircraft, not Russian style. Different shape, different sound. Could be civilian, could be something else. I don't care. I'm going to test it. I position myself behind a rock so most of my body is covered. I hold the mirror at my chest, use both hands, and aim a tight series of flashes at the tiny speck using a simple, agreed-upon pattern. Not Morse, not something cute, just I am here in a rhythm we sometimes brief. I do it 3 times, spaced out. Then I stop. You don't wave. You don't keep flashing like a kid with a toy. You make your mark and then you blend back into rock. The smugglers watch, amused. We wait for a while. Nothing. Then, the tiniest change. The aircraft alters course slightly. Not a huge swing. Just enough to pass more directly over this slice of mountain. As it does, I think I hear the engines rev slightly. Could be my imagination. Could be nothing. Could be acknowledgement. I don't assume anything. But an hour later, low in our valley, we hear something else. Distant. A motor. Old. Rough. Smuggler number 1 cocks his head. That's not ours, he says. We listen. Truck engine. Working hard up a bad road. Coming from the direction of a border I'm interested in. Not from the main valley I left days ago. We moved down to a vantage point and watch. It's a beat up lorry, paint faded, with a couple of men in the cab. No obvious markings. Could be any local. Could be a lot of things. But it stops at a little pull-off that's not a pull-off. Just a flat spot big enough for a vehicle, screened by rock. Too convenient. My instincts wake up. One of the smugglers glances at me. "You know this?" he asks. "Maybe," I answer. I take a risk. I step out onto the path where I can be seen by the truck, but not by anyone above. One of the men climbs down from the cab. He doesn't shoulder a rifle. He doesn't look around like a nervous conscript. He stands there, hands loose, eyes scanning the rocks in a way I recognize, like a man who's done this dance before. He calls out a phrase in the local language that sounds harmless. Then he switches to heavily accented English. "Billy," he says, voice kept low but carrying, "if you're up there and still breathing, now is the time." That tells me everything I need to know. He wasn't guessing my name. Somebody who can task a plane can also get a message into this valley. Maybe a cutout, maybe a local militia leader we've backed quietly. Doesn't matter. It means the universe has decided this is as good an exfil as I'm going to get. I turn to the smugglers. "This is where I leave you," I say. They both look a little irritated, like they're losing the end of a good story. One shrugs. "You will owe us," he says. "I already do." "Debt is fine. It means you're alive to pay it later." I pick my way down the rocks, body suddenly feeling every one of my years. When I step into the little cleared spot, the man from the truck looks me over like he's taking inventory of a used vehicle. "Couldn't find a hotel," he says dryly. I snort. Room service was terrible. Behind the jokes, there's business. "Anyone behind you?" he asks. "Not close," I answer. "They'll still be sniffing that ridge for a while. Some of their units have pulled out. The rest are tired." He nods, satisfied. "Get in the back," he says, "under the sacks." That's it. No big celebration. No movie ending. Just to climb into a dusty truck bed, pulling rough burlap over myself that smells like fertilizer and old wool. As the engine grinds into gear and we start crawling along a goat track of a road toward a border that officially I've never crossed, I let my head rest back against the metal. 9 days. No shots fired. No bodies left cooling on the rocks. Just one old man refusing to be where the doctrine said he should be. Staying invisible isn't magic. It's discipline. It's knowing that a warrior isn't the loudest, the flashiest, the guy kicking down doors on camera. A warrior is the guy that wishes to be involved, period, and who will do the boring, painful, meticulous work required to stay in the game, to bring back what he saw, to write it down, to record it, to take photographs, to make sure the story is told right. Later, much later, in a safer room, I'll lay out the camera, the notes, the map in my head. I'll brief people in clean shirts about how those Spetsnaz trained men moved, how they hunted, where they got lazy, where they were sharp. Some of them will nod, some will barely listen. That's life. But somewhere, someday, some kid will go into harm's way with a better picture because an old warrior stayed invisible for 9 days instead of getting dramatic for 9 minutes. That's the job. Not glory. Not headlines. Presence. Being there. Seeing. Surviving. Coming home with the story. So when you ask, "Billy, how did you stay invisible when Spetsnaz hunted you?" the answer isn't sexy. I listened more than I talked. I moved when they slept. I went where it sucked. I made them chase ghosts while I walked the ugly ground. I volunteered for everything that hurt. I documented everything that mattered. And I never once let panic make a decision for me. You want to live like that? Start now. Volunteer for the hard jobs. Learn the languages. Study the maps. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Because when the day comes and professional hunters are looking for you, whether they're wearing Spetsnaz patches or not, you won't rise to some imaginary occasion. you'll fall back on what you trained yourself to be. Invisible. Present, warrior.